Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Well, I was scheduled to start a half hour ago and the internet wasn't working. And, um, you know, I just had, and so since it wasn't working, I just did a phone call and um, just feeling so filled with the peace and love and joy of God. So now I'm going to get to share on that a little bit. And so my understanding really of the whole essence of what Bruno Groening taught was having a God-filled life, relying on God, seeking God's guidance, seeking to be connected to God moment by moment. There's a beautiful phrase that sums it up out of out of a book that I love. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. So I think that's really what everything Bruno Groening taught was about that, about people getting connected to God. And of course, Bruno Groening pointed out that to do that, we need to free ourselves from evil. But that we weren't able to even do that on our own, that we needed God's help to free ourselves. So, Bruno Groening called us, and part of the way we do that is through self-reflection. Bruno called people to reflect on everything they had said and done and thought, even. To keep it simple, part of how he did that is he taught people to do this at the end of each day, which then creates a little less backlog. But what I'm starting to realize is that it's, yes, I do this at the end of each day. I reflect on my day. But also it's about reflecting on our life, on, on what we've thought and said and done. Was it in divine order or not? And if not, to firmly repent, meaning to regret and to decide to do better. And because Bruno Groening spoke of the force of habit. So many things we do are just from a place of habit. And if we're in habit, we're not really connected to God. And so it's through this process of self-reflection that I've come to recognize my habits, come to recognize the things that I do that disconnect me from God. And sometimes it's very funny. Sometimes I'll notice like, oh, that doesn't work. And then it'll take me 4 or 5 times of noticing before I'm able to make a change. For example, I like to take a supplement very early when I wake up, first thing. It just makes sense to me to take it, um, to take it, as early as possible. And I noticed that, and then I was like, okay, so tomorrow I'm gonna take it early, and then the next day I missed it, and I'm like, oh, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna take it early, and I missed it again. It took me like 3 or 4 times, and then I like put the supplement bottle right where I could see it first thing in the morning, and I still now I pretty much do it consistently. But so that's an example of, you know, to change. And this is a very small change. Like ultimately it doesn't really matter when I take it. I just have the thought, oh, it'll be more efficient to take it earlier. But this is what we're up against. Bruno said he said that we're up against the force of habit. And if I can find it, I think I'll read exactly what he said because he said it so beautifully. Yeah, I know exactly where it is. Okay, good. I know that you are in the midst of everyday life. I know that you have taken in everyday habits. I know that you have been taught wrongly by people of an older generation because they had also succumbed to the force of habit. People without belief who influenced you just by their opinions without creed. So just in that one sentence, Bruno kind of lays it all out. So we're up against a force, this force called habit. And where did we get this from? Well, ultimately, we got it from people who taught us wrongly. And of course, they had been taught wrongly, and so forth and so on. But so, in essence, we kind of inherited more in a spiritual sense by taking in, by listening to untrue things. And so, this process is a process of freeing us from all the garbage, really, that we've taken in, that we're bad, that we're wrong, that we don't deserve happiness, that God doesn't care, that God is vengeful, um, that life is just about acquiring material happiness, and even just how to live life. We've just been taught wrongly on every subject. As they say in computer language, garbage in, garbage out, meaning if you put in a computer sort of bad programming, or bad information, you're going to get inaccurate information out. So no wonder we as individuals are struggling to have, um, we'll say as the human race. I still struggle somewhat, but I'm feeling like my life is coming into order. But no wonder people and no wonder us as a human race are struggling because we've been fed bad information. And it's not just kind of the information of like, um, like let's say someone teaches us that, a tree, in English, a tree is called a tree, and someone teaches us, oh, it's called a pre, like it's not just a mispronunciation. We've been taught fundamentally wrong about what we are, what God is, and how to live life. So is it any wonder, and not just us as individuals, and not every single person in the world is taught wrongly, but according to the teachings of Bruno Groening, most people have been taught wrongly. And so no wonder the world's a mess. In computer talk, there's an operating system. That's like the fundamental, and then we add on programs on top of that. It's not just that we've been given bad programs. The operating system is what allows the computer to even use the programs. So you want to open up your Internet Explorer. I use Mozilla. Other people use da-da-da. It doesn't really matter, different programs. But to even be able to open your Internet Explorer, the operating system has to be good. If a program is damaged or bad, you can just take it out and put a new one in or get another program. Let's say I use Mozilla, or no, I'm using Chrome. I don't even know what program I'm using. So let's say there's a problem with Chrome. No problem. I take it out and I download it again, or I just get a new one. Then I start using Microsoft Internet Explorer. No problem. It's just a program, not a big deal. But if the operating system, I'm using Windows, if there's a problem with the operating system, nothing works or everything works poorly. And to fix the operating system, not a little deal. If there becomes a problem with Windows, it's not an easy fix. You have to take everything out and literally start over. So we've all been fed and taught a bad operating system. And then we can begin to understand what Bruno Groening meant by the force of habit. We not just have a bad program, like there's some fundamental things, some fundamental a force at work, he calls it, again, the force of habit, that we need to, if we want to be happy and healthy, if we want to grow spiritually, that we have to struggle against. I started off by saying that my understanding, the essence of what Bruno taught was to rely on God. Well, we've been taught to rely on everything but God. In the household I was raised in, and God bless my parents who gave me the gift of life, who were doing the best they could, religion for us was going to church on Sunday. That's it. I don't even think we said grace before meals, or maybe we sometimes said grace. That's all religion was. something you do on Sunday for an hour. You don't think about it or talk about it the rest of the time. And again, I'm not saying this to criticize my parents. They were doing the best they can. That's how they were taught. And the people who taught them were doing the best they could. And so each person comes here with a different, slightly different distortions in their operating system. We don't need to focus too much on that. It can just be helpful to highlight them a little bit, maybe. But what is important is to recognize what the solution is. We need to recognize that something's not right, but then we need to recognize what the solution is. And Bruno Groening adamantly declared, only God can help. If with a computer, my operating system is messed up and I do all these things, like let's say I uninstall and reinstall different programs, and I say, okay, well, I'll only use my computer a little bit, or I'll try a new program. I can try all these things, but until the operating system gets switched, nothing's going to really work. So we need to recognize there's this fundamental problem, and Bruno Groening makes it really simple. He says it's evil, that we all have a virus. There's a little bit of talk nowadays about another virus, but for me, that virus is just a symptom of the true virus, which Bruno Groening called evil, nastiness, vicious, in German, Bosse. And so what we need to do if we want to be free of this virus is recognize that we have a virus and recognize that it's not a quick fix, that going to the gym, that taking supplements, that doing, journaling, that while all those things are healthy and helpful, and if you feel drawn to them, and I do all of them to some extent, but none of them are going to actually solve the problem. So coming back to the computer analogy, maybe there are some things like I can tinker and I can change some settings, and maybe I can tinker and tinker so that things work a little better. Great. That's a good thing. And if you feel guided to do it, do it. And it's not going to solve the fundamental problem. All those things are kind of just tinkering on the surface, playing around with settings and changing programs on the computer. That's not going to fix the operating system. To do that is required a kind of spiritual surgery, and it's not something that I was able to do on my own. And according to Bruno Groening, most people are not able to remove the evil, the true virus on their own. For that, they need God. And most people aren't even able to connect to God directly on their own. For that, they need a spiritual helper. Why? It's a mystery of the universe, but when a person or maybe it's mysterious to me, or just according to Bruno Groening, it's a fact of the universe. It's more like it's new information. That once a person starts taking on evil, then they go on a downward path. And at a certain point on that path, they get to a place where they can't on their own receive the divine energy. They get to a place where they need a spiritual helper, as Bruno says, a helping hand. Bruno never claimed to have a monopoly on being such. He spoke very highly of Jesus Christ, and I haven't read it personally, but I've heard that he also spoke highly of the yogis of India, people who dedicated their lives to being in union and communion with God. So to free ourselves, we have to understand that it's a very deep problem. And then we need to understand that what the solution is, God, or as the book I started off with, much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power. Why do we need God? Because the problem is so deep. And because it's evil, it's not just a flat tire, right? We've been taught that, well, if you have a problem, just find the solution. Like, if you eat too much, well, just become more disciplined. Or if you're unhealthy, just change your diet or take a pill or da da da. And again, I personally believe that, especially if it's something natural, and this is something I'm still researching, but I know that Bruno Groening once said, in olden times, if someone had a problem with their eye, then they knew about a specific herb that they could just put on their eye and would help. So my understanding is that Bruno Groening was very much an advocate of any natural form of help. Um, and and all those things, and my understanding is even sort of natural cures don't get at the real aren't really don't really get at the root. They're not going to remove the evil that caused the problem. And then there's the need for humility. The question is, once we understand, okay, so the problem's evil and the solution is God, then there needs to be humility. Are we able to do it on our own? If you are, then great. Um, if you are, then I want to learn from you, because I don't feel that I'm quite to the point where I still feel the need for a spiritual helper. Now, lately, I'm feeling more like I can just connect to God. But when the troubles arise, I ask Bruno for help. And so humility is needed. Part of it's humility that we need God because we've been taught wrongly that we don't. And part of it's humility, the recognition that, oh, wow, I'm not able to access God on my own. How to know? Well, if you can just free yourself from evil, a burden, whether it be emotional, physical, on your own, then and you're able to consistently do that, then maybe you probably don't need a spiritual helper. And if you can't make the bold declaration, I am stronger than evil, then maybe a spiritual helper would be very helpful. So let's reflect on all this, or reflect on whatever you feel drawn to, as we take some time and take in this good energy, asking God to free us from the force of habit, free us from our arrogance, and to lead us and guide us. Help us recognize our need for God. That, as Bruno Groening said, human being must be under divine guidance. There is no life without it. I just read something from the book of Ecclesiastes from the Bible, which said, all things that are not guided by God are vain, meaning worthless. And that's really the essence of what Bruno taught. As he said, human being must be under divine guidance. There is no life without it. He said, what are we without God? I declare we nothing. Without God, a human being isn't even really a human being, because they're living from the force of habit. So let's break the fundamental habit, turning away from God. And if you haven't already, sometimes I start off these meetings just with tuning in. Sometimes I talk a bunch. I just try and follow guidance. You're welcome to start tuning in the moment these begin. Of course, the goal is to tune in every moment of the day. And then I don't know that tune in is the appropriate word. Translation, the German word is Einstellen. I would say attune, to receive the divine broadcast, to take in. We want to take in the divine energy. We want to Einstellen all day long to the best of our ability and to grow towards that. So please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards, back, not leaning against your chair if possible. Handing over all burdens, all worries. separating yourself from the thought of illness, taking on the thought of faith, taking on the thought of healing, and then ask to receive the healing stream, the divine energy, the divine stream, the divine current. I don't even know if I want to call it the healing stream anymore. That translation, Bruno said physical healing was only 10% of what his work was about. The divine energy, the salvation. Let's take in the salvation stream. Salvation from what? From evil. Noticing what you feel, trusting that every sensation is a step towards recovery. having the beautiful experience right now of becoming friends with someone who practices Islam, with a Muslim, and I've had plenty of conversations with Muslims, but it's the first person I've really gotten to know, and this person has a more spiritual orientation than a sort of a religious one. It was really beautiful. I shared with her how that it was really special to me to, that just to get to know someone from a very different culture or religion. And her response just almost moved me to tears. She said, it doesn't really matter what religion you are, every person is seeking God. Every person is looking for something that's constant. And I think that's the real truth. And that's really what Bruno Groening taught. He said it doesn't matter how one finds God, just that one finds God. He said to be connected to God, that is everything. And listening to her, I said, yeah, it's like we're all looking for a constant companion. And isn't that true? Or I believe it is. I thought it was really wise that we're all looking for this sense of connection always, every moment of the day, and that we look for it. We've been taught wrongly to look for it in people, in books, in churches, but really it's um, even in self-help things. But what we're really, I kind of made that my God, but really those are just things to help us connect to God. And when they're done well, they're just a tool that point us in the right direction, that support that. And when they're done poorly, they become a block. They become the thing we worship. So my hope is this: these meetings are that is they point to God, and if I'm doing my job well, um, I'm I'm sharing and teaching the teachings of Bruno Groening so that you don't need me, so that you don't need these meetings, that they can be a joy to come to, and that my ultimate hope is to share these teachings so that other people go out and share them. That's my real, it's my, I do these meetings for my own development to be of service, um, and then ultimately to get people to the point that they want to share this in their own way. And they may not even mention Bruno Groening. I, I introduced someone to the teachings a long time ago, and she went to a lot of meetings and she got a lot out of it. And then she kind of got to the point where she just doesn't really like focusing on particular teachers or teachings. For her, it's just about the energy. And so she's gone off and she's written a book teaching people, and that Einstein is part of it. And so grateful. And so Bruno Groening said that paradise would be restored on earth, which I take to mean that it's inevitable. It's going to happen. The how and the when, that's or the when, how long it takes, that's where we have free will. So let's ask when we tune in to be guided. What's our part? What's our part in this great divine work? What's our part in literally helping paradise be brought back to earth? So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in today. I have such a wonderful feeling in my heart. And my hope is that each of you has been able to tap into that. And I'm very convinced that each of you have helped me to tune into that. So let's just seek that more and more each day. Let's learn how to find it on our own, and then come together and strengthen, support each other in finding the one solution, the one thing we've been looking for everywhere, the one thing we need, our maker. Bruno would say, our Lord God. And I never understood Lord, but now I'm starting to, it's just a word that means that which rules, um, that which is in charge of the universe, our maker, that which is all powerful and yet has given us free will to disobey in a sense. So let's make good use of our will and align it with God and ask, how can I serve you? What would you have me do? All right, dear ones, thank you so much for joining in. Very grateful. And we'll be doing this. If the internet works, we'll be doing this again real soon. Thank you. Take care.